thanks so much for joining us on this episode of Bold as Brass. We're here for our fundraising podcast-a-thon, and I'm here with this wonderful panel that are joining us for the discussion on the multifaceted career, which is just a fancy way of saying we're all freelancers. So I'm so excited to have so many people here with me, and thank you so much everyone for giving me your time. So a lot of what I do when I come around to you each in turn is just going to be based on how you're on my screen. So please don't think I'm playing favourites already. So we're going to come around and meet all of you so that you can give us a bit of an idea of who you are and what you do. And then we've got some great questions to get stuck into. So we've got two Beccas. I'm going to Becca H first. I'm coming to you. You're first on my screen.
Hello, I'm Becca Holman. I'm a freelance musician based in the Midlands. My primary instrument is French horn, but I teach all different brass instruments, and I also enjoy doing work with children with SEND in special schools and communities around Worcestershire.
Amazing. Well, hello, fellow Midlander. And I think I'm probably coming across to someone who's not too far away either. So, Pete, I'm coming to you next.
Hi, yes, I'm in the Midlands as well. I'm in Worcester. I'm Pete. I'm a trombonist, pianist, accordionist. I do quite a lot of performance work, and I also teach the whole class first access music education lessons, as well as some private piano and brass perry work as well. So that's me in a nutshell.
Amazing. Hannah, I'm coming to you next.
Hi, I'm a freelance horn player based in London, and alongside playing, I teach brass instruments, music theory, and a little bit of piano as well.
Excellent. Becca T, you're up next.
Hello, I'm Rebecca, other Rebecca. I'm a freelance trumpet player in London, and I also do lots of teaching for music services, mostly whole class. I'm also training to be a counsellor. And I also I help run the podcast Things Musicians Don't Talk About. So that's me.
Amazing. We've got so many Beckys and Beccas. Becky Pepper, coming to you next.
Hi, I'm Becky, or Rebecca, but let's just stick to Becky. I think that'll be easier. And I'm also in the Midlands. I'm a little bit further northeast than I think everyone else because I'm in Mansfield. So I am a trombone player, but I also double euphonium as well. And so I do play both of those quite a lot, but also a lot of teaching. Most of my teaching's one-to-one. So yeah, but across all the brass instruments. And also I do quite a bit of arranging, and I do some work with various trombone societies as well. So the British Trombone Society and International Trombone Association.
Amazing. And last but not least, we've got our only non-UK guest, Rose. Hi.
Hello, good morning from sunny Los Angeles. So my name is Rose Doylemason. I am a bass trombonist and tenor freelancer doubler in LA. So I do, like any LA musician, any music you can imagine, orchestral, big band, commercial. But I also love to write. I do program notes and promotional materials for several smaller orchestras. I'm a teacher. I teach middle school band as well as high school marching bands across LA in 4 different high schools. And then I'm also a COVID compliance officer. I was the COVID compliance officer for the Los Angeles Philharmonic and the Hollywood Bowl, and now I'm doing it freelance. I do it for orchestras, tours, all over, and for film sets.
Amazing. I'm so excited to hear about everything that everyone does, because it seems like we've all got some things that probably cross over and some things that are completely different to one another, which is exciting. Everyone that's listening to this already knows who I am, so I'm not really going to over-explain who I am. But my sort of part in this is I'm also a freelancer. I do a lot of teaching. I was an orchestral manager in my last job. I obviously run a podcast. I hope you all know that. And so, yeah, we've got quite a lot of things that do cross over. So we've got, like I said, a bunch of questions that were sent in to us, and I'm going to sort of just throw them out there. Anyone that's got something to immediately jump in and say, feel free to take it on. Otherwise, it's basically going to be like I'm taking some sort of register. So if you want to jump in or be next up, just pop a little hand up, either your actual hand or the really cute little emoji hand, which I love. Like little thumbs up me next. Any of those is fine. So and I'll just try and grab who I see, obviously figuratively, we're not in the same room, when I can. So the first one up, and that I thought was an interesting one, was what is your favourite thing about having a freelance career? Anyone want to jump in on this first? Go on, Becca.
I really like the variety of it. I like that no week is the same. And yes, so you can sort of pick and choose which bits you like. And if you don't like something, it's not the end of the world because it's only part of your week, and then you can enjoy something else in the rest of the week. So yeah, mostly the variety. Meeting lots of different people, I really enjoy that as well. And especially sort of freelance concerts and things like that. You go in and you kind of just all in the same boat, and you just get along with the people you're with, really. So that's what I like about it.
Yeah, nice. Anyone want to add to that? Becca, other Becca. Oh, sorry, Pete, that's twice you put your hand up and I've ignored you. Sorry, I'm going to go to Becca first.
That's all right.
I was going to say I enjoy not having to get up so early all the time. And also selfishly, I enjoy not having to spend every day with the same people. Like, I enjoy having some alone time, like being at home. But I also enjoy the fact that I see different people every day of the week, mostly.
Yeah, I can get on board with that. Pete, I'm going to come to you now before I forget again. Sorry.
That's all right. I think for me, it's the adventure of it, really. Building on what everybody's saying is that, it's different people, it's different job, different work, but it's also getting that text or that phone call that you really weren't expecting to get, saying, "Oh, are you free to come and do this?" And you think, actually, yeah, that's brilliant. I'd love to go and do that.
Yeah, anyone else got anything on that one? Becky?
Yeah, so just to kind of add to that, I think it's having be able to make your own creative choices. I think often as artists, if you're in a fixed job, you have to do what your organisation or, you have to adhere to other people in a group. And I'm sure all of us have done chamber groups where we've had to do that before and stuff. But at least, as you say, that's only part of your job. So you get to kind of choose, well, no, this is entirely my project now, or I want to organise this way, or, you get to pick your own ideas and have your own creative freedom.
Nice. Rose, what do you reckon?
Yeah, I think, and like what Becca was saying, if you don't like something, it's never too late to pivot. There are some jobs that I've picked up even as a musician and a player that I just realized, like, oh, I actually don't really like doing this. I don't like playing this kind of music. I don't like doing this. And there's nothing wrong with just not taking that work anymore. And so as I age as a player and as a person, I, don't want to do this anymore. And you can really have a career that's never the same year to year, even week to week, but even further than that. So.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I found interesting about the sort of career we have is that I moved in the middle of the pandemic, like the wise person that I am. In the middle of 2020, I decided to move to a completely different area of the country. And when I spoke to a lot of my family, they were surprised that within about 3 months I actually had some work. And I was like, yes, welcome to the freelancing life. You can sort of slot in if there's a space. You can pick up some work. I had bits of teaching and a little bit of playing, and it was not so hard to start over. That sounds very dramatic. It wasn't that dramatic, I promise. It wasn't a bad thing. But yeah, it was quite nice that there's always something wherever you are as well, which is bonus. Cool. I'm just going to scan around and make sure I've not missed anyone. This is showing me to be a very observant class teacher this time, isn't it? I clearly missed some people. So then the flip side to that question, which also came in, was there are lots of great things about being a freelancer. Are there any things that you would consider difficult or a downside to our sort of job? Oh, Becky's straight in there.
Money. I'm just going to go there and say it. Yeah, because COVID hit me hard financially. I think probably more than any other way, and I don't think I'm the only one that's in that situation at all. But it's just having that sort of financial stability, I guess, and you can make it work for you 100%. But I think when things like happen, like COVID and stuff like that, it can sort of send you sideways a little bit. So I'd say perhaps not having that same sense of security. And I think that has its benefits as well, because it stops you getting too stagnant or stale or anything like that in a job. But yeah, definitely the insecurity in terms of finance and benefits.
Yeah, I'm sure we've all felt that one. Rose, what do you think?
Yeah, similarly, I don't know many other careers where you just have to have a whole backup career in your pocket.
Mm-hmm.
At all times. You're just like, well, if the pandemic goes another year, maybe I can be a doctor, or, something where, I don't think my friend in aerospace engineering ever thinks, well, just in case I have to train to be a teacher. Like, that's such an odd thing, but we're just always ready to go, which is good, but also very taxing on your, goals and everything else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Becca, what do you think?
I find it quite hard to switch. Like when there's so many different jobs going on, like it's quite tiring to switch from Monday being whole class teacher to Tuesday training to be counsellor or whatever, and then Wednesday one-to-one teacher with a gig in the afternoon or whatever. So that's quite tiring, but simultaneously, because you've got so many things on the go, it never really feels like you're working hard enough in just one avenue, and you feel like you could always be doing more. So it's really hard to feel like satisfied, or like, yeah, like I've really like gone hard on the teaching and now I'm feeling, or whatever it is. Yeah.
Yeah, I completely get that one. Pete?
I think the other thing with it is actually finding time to continue your own love of music. If you've done days in a classroom, you've been learning stuff for somebody else's gig, actually by the time you got to the end of the week, have you got that mental space and have you got that capacity to pick the horn up and enjoy playing it? I think that's probably the biggest challenge for me personally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Hannah, what do you think?
Just adding on to what everyone else was saying, especially the like financial struggle. I don't know if anyone else feels that, especially like sort of coming out of graduating and then into the industry, you kind of are under the impression that you can't say no to things. And as much as we were saying that's one of the advantages, we can be in charge of it, especially during the pandemic. You kind of feel like you shouldn't say no to anything because anything you get, you should grab. And I sometimes still feel that pressure, like, oh, I shouldn't really be turning things down. Like, who do I think I am turning things down all the time? Or do you know what I mean? That you kind of feel like you're letting someone down. So there's that added pressure. And I always feel like that's actually a disadvantage rather than I don't feel as in control of what I'm putting in my diary or whatever.
Yeah, for sure. For sure, Becca.
But I completely feel that, and conversely, there's always this narrative of like, yeah, but you've got to choose the creative that you want to be in, like you've got to stand by your ethics, and yeah, I'm not gonna like accept any work that's underpaid or with somebody that I don't agree with or that kind of stuff. And it's really hard to feel, because I think as artists we're quite like self-aware, and we're always trying to figure out what's the right thing and trying to on a higher level, so I think it's really hard to have those things running side by side.
I don't know if anyone else has the same thing that I do sometimes, where I love social media for like not only like how many opportunities it's brought me, like I literally couldn't be running this right now if we didn't have social media, but sometimes I'll flick through someone's story and think, shit, how did you eat today? Like there's people that seem to be going from teaching to playing back to teaching, and then they're doing admin, then they're doing some recording, then they're doing this, and I'm like, it's that thing, who was that person last week that was like, we all have the same 24 hours in a day, and I'm like, no, I don't understand how you've got this, like even that 12 hours in the day, how are you doing this? So either I feel like I'm not working hard enough because these other people seem to be doing 7,000 things a day, or that I'm doing too much or I'm not trying enough. Does that make sense? I don't know if anyone else gets that, where it's just like, maybe I don't believe we do have the same 24 hours in a day. Stupid thing to say. Sorry, Rose, your hand went up. I'm going to get off my soapbox and pass it back to you.
No, well, I mean, it's hard enough to balance your own career without having to mentally balance others. And other people are constantly achieving and winning, and that's so perfect and wonderful. And especially when they're your best friends, your closest friends, the ones you went to college with, playing the same instrument as you is even harder. I take orchestral auditions now. I'm on that path, and a lot of my very good bass trombone friends are orchestral bass trombonists. We're competing for one spot, so it's really hard, like emotionally, to be like, great, I'm so glad you won the thing I've been preparing for 5 months. Like that comparing other people's is can really just weigh on your own career as well.
Yeah, for sure. And I've had this conversation on various other panels and podcasts and things I've done before, that it took me a really long time to realize that my career didn't need to look like somebody else's, and that there was space for me to have the job that I wanted. I think for the first, like Hannah was saying, when you come out of graduation, there's this expectation of what you should be doing and what you shouldn't be doing and what your career should look like. And I graduated at what, 22? I'm 30 now. I realised it this year. It took me 8 years. It's a really long time. Anyone listening to this, just take away from this, you don't need to take as long as I did. Clearly, I bit slow in the brain. That's my bad. So anyway, there's room for everyone. Anyone else got anything else they want to chip in on this one? Sorry, Becca, yes, up there.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that it's sort of concluding what everyone said, but the fact that we have so many skills as a freelance musician. I think it's really important sometimes to just sort of sit back and realize how multi-talented and how multi-skilled we are. And I mean, especially as brass players, having to teach all the brass instruments, and actually, if you were doing a different career, they might be seem more successful, but actually, we're actually doing all right. And I sometimes have to sit back and sort of remind myself, because I think you're right, going back to what Rebecca said about doing lots of different things and sort of finding a way in lots of different ways. Might not seem as successful, but yeah. That's my thoughts on it.
Yeah, no, I think it's really nice to, not that we've put a negative spin on it, but it's really easy in that question to suddenly feel like, oh, it's not like that at all. But, you know, everything's got both sides, hasn't it? Pete's got the cute little emoji hand up. Go on then.
It did that automatically. I put my hand up like that, and I had a thing flash up saying it's going up.
I love
so
that.
I don't know how I did that. I think the main thing is, the main thing is having the courage of your convictions, because ultimately it's not like we're going into working in a business or working in a firm. There is no set path to the top, because everybody's got a different top. Everyone's got a different route. And I think it's actually finding that happiness in what you're doing at the time that you're doing it. And then also not being afraid to make a change when the time is right for you. Mm-hmm. But especially in this age of social media, as you're saying, you're constantly comparing, you're constantly judging. I should be doing that. I could be doing that. I can't play like that. And actually you think, well, I can't play like that, but I can play like that.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's it. Faith. Keeping the faith.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I think what Pete just said is going to tie in nicely with the next question that I've got. So I'm going to go to that one because I think it links nicely. And the next one was, is there any advice that you would give to students that are considering specifically a freelance career? It was a moment of radio silence. It was terrifying. Rose, go ahead.
One piece of advice that was given to me, and I actually get reminded constantly by my teacher, be nice to everyone. It's really important. And it's not about kissing ass. It's not about, sucking up to people to try and get jobs. It's not to get jobs. It's to keep them. Mm-hmm. And so it's about, also, it's more enjoyable if you like the people in your section, and way more enjoyable if they like you. And if you're the kind of person who can, who will gossip, and that, it will come back to you, and you will not have this career anymore, because you're going to be with the same people for the next 4 decades. It's going to be the same circuit, and you want to make sure that being nice to people is chief on your mind when you go to a gig.
Yeah, for sure. I think I was given a very similar piece of advice. It's one that I've really taken to heart. Becca, what do you think?
I think... I've forgotten. What was the question?
It's about your best advice for anyone.
Oh, yeah.
Freelancing.
I got it. My boyfriend and I often say to each other, like, productivity doesn't need to result in like a finished product. So it's kind of a bit tenuous, but like, being productive doesn't mean that you have to win a job, or like those 5 months of practice are still productive, even if you don't get the end result. Or like your day off, you don't have to have something to show at the end of it. Like, productivity could just, for you in that moment, could just be resting or listening or something like that. And I think, especially when you're a student, it's same when you're freelancing, but everybody seems to be achieving these like finite things all the time. And especially when you come to like submit a CV or something, you're like, but I don't have anything to show for my work. But that doesn't mean that you haven't been building on you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Hannah, what do you think?
One of the best pieces of advice I was given by a teacher was, you never know who's listening. And what I would say is, especially in conservatoire or when you're studying anywhere, whether it's uni, there's a lot of pressure to pigeon yourself into, I'm a high player, I'm a low player, I'm a solo player, I'm a first, or whatever it is. And one of the best pieces of advice I was given was, even if you're fourth horn or, off stage, out the corridor, on the street, you play as if you're first, because you never know who's listening. And a lot of the work I've then been given is because, I wasn't being paid much, but I played with some orchestra, I'm fourth horn. It was easy, but then it's led to other things, because I still played it as well as I might have played, the first of track 5 or whatever. So I think it's important not to sort of categorize yourself and narrow it down too early on, because I think we all fell into that trap. I certainly did. And then I realized a few years later, especially in my master's, just don't pigeon yourself into one category and try and be able to do everything with the most, productivity and get the right results.
Yeah, absolutely. Open-mindedness, very important. Becky.
I just wanted to add on to what Hannah was saying with that. She was talking about different types of playing. I'd also add into that, don't be afraid to try different types of music, genre, and types of performing and stuff. And like what we were saying before, is one of the good things is, if you go and you try something and it's not for you, you don't like it, then just don't accept that type of gig again. But don't limit yourself by not going for that gig because it's not classical, or you think, oh, but I'm not a jazz player, so I can't sit in swing band, or, and put those limits on yourself. Try it. And if you can't do it, people will soon tell you. So, like if they say, what, you are too straight for that gig or whatever, that's fine. People aren't going to mind. And it's much better to have someone come to you and say, oh yeah, that gig wasn't, I don't think, this is the right thing for you, than it is for people to like never ring you. But quite often they might actually then divert that onto something else. It's not, everything negative isn't always a big criticism on what you're doing. But if you don't put yourself out there, no one will ever even know what you can do, let alone what you can't do.
Yeah, that I'm going to quickly tell a very short story that just rang with me when you said that, Becky, about people telling you if you're not very good at something. I did jazz lessons for 2 years at college. My teacher eventually told me, we think this is not for you, Melissa. Jazz, not for you.
I have to say, listening to the podcast, I have a very similar story with the sackbut. I was told not for me with sackbut. So that was my early music career over. But, you got to try.
Yeah, my jazz teacher just said, I think your extra hours can be used elsewhere. And I was like, that's a diplomatic way of saying you're shit. And I get it. It's not for me. I know that now. I'm glad he told me in my second year and I didn't just keep trying for like my whole life. Anyway, sorry. The story time is over. Somebody had their hand up. Pete, was it you? Seeing as I keep forgetting you, I'm going to always guess that it was you.
That's okay. I guess the best bit of advice I was given was from my teacher at Leeds. And he said, you've got to take a different bag to each gig. The point being that, mentally you have to put yourself in the situation that you're going to be playing. I studied the jazz course at Leeds, and the point he was making was in relation to, you can use the same bits of language, but you've got to phrase it in a different way. If you're playing on a Latin gig or you're playing on a bebop gig, there's a lot of crossover, but you can't go in, unless you are the soloist, you can't go in and play it like you want to play it. You have got to be respectful to the music that you're playing and to the people that you're playing it with to make their job as easy as it possibly can, especially if you're depping on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Anyone else got one for this? Becca?
We slightly touched on it earlier, but about being open-minded. And I think for me personally, when I studied at conservatoire, I was always thinking, well, I want to be the best player I can be. I want to be playing, I want to be performing. And actually, I wish I was more open-minded when studying and going out and maybe shadowing some more different types of teaching or shadowing some more community events or things like that. So yeah, not being narrow-minded. And I think, I don't know if it's just me, the sort of bubble I was in, but there's quite a lot of stigma with being a successful musician is being performing all the time. And I think actually teaching is as rewarding, as important as the performing side of it. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think my advice would be to go out there, shadow different types of teachers, go to different make different contacts through the educational world as well as the performing world.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I think mine, we touched on a little bit earlier. I realise I'm not supposed to answer my own questions, but it's my panel. I can do what I want. Mine, just to chip in, I think we touched on a little bit in the question before, which is about comparing yourself to others. And it's not so much about your sort of career shape as much as it is about personality types. I was told by a teacher at college that the reason that I wasn't doing so well as another member of my studio was because I wasn't behaving like them and I wasn't playing like them and I needed to be more like them. And I was like, but I'm not them, I'm me. And I felt for a long time that I was doing a lot of things wrong because I wasn't them. And actually that wasn't very helpful. And I took it far too much to heart. So I think taking a step back from anyone that makes you feel a little bit awkward and compares you to others and maybe not comparing yourself to others is it puts you in a much better headspace and allows you to be the musician that you want to be. Oh, so many hands went up in response to that one. Rose.
Well, I think another piece of advice I have to people who want to be freelancers is just your happiness is really important. And that's something that, especially over the pandemic, I've really had some time to sit with. And especially because I worked in administration at the LA Phil for 3.5 years. And of course, I'll never name names, but there are some musicians in the Phil who are less than happy in general, just with their life and their career. And it just seems like they're kind of miserable. And they have one of the greatest jobs in the world. And, you know, for me as a musician waiting in the wings and the admin, just staring at them being unhappy was so confusing to me. And there are freelancers I know who are also just kind of miserable old guys. And I think I finally found the combination of things that make me really happy. And it's wonderful. And I think some people really take what they feel like they need to, and they choose things that are for other people, and they're miserable. And life is too short to be miserable. So you really just fill your life with things like, you know, you got to pay the bills, that's for sure, but you can do it and enjoy your life. It's possible. So even if you have to try a million things to find the 3 things that you enjoy most, like, it's worth trying a million things.
Yeah. Becky's hand went up during that one.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. That really resonated with me a lot. Because I was in a similar position of feeling like having to chase certain goals or certain achievements. But unfortunately, like with a lot of the things that are passion projects for us as musicians, they're not financially rewarding. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, obviously I talked a little bit about the money side of it before, and not to be all like, you know, icky with money, but just actually sometimes it's so much better to be happy with your music making, your creativity, even if it's not making you money, and go out and work part-time. And if you're doing, you know, well, in fact, I am, and I did through COVID. I took on all sorts of different jobs, just like waitressing and all of that sort of stuff. And it just means that you've got that guaranteed paycheck, and it's easy work, you know, like it's not hard to do as long as you find something that works for you. And then it's like, so I've got all the rest of my time. It doesn't matter if I don't get a really highly paid gig. It doesn't matter if loads of people don't buy my arrangements this month. It doesn't matter, you know, I can actually focus on what's important to me without stressing that everything has to be about the bottom line, which in a sense is actually more kind of artistically rewarding anyway, isn't it? Rather than doing something that you think is going to be profitable and sort of selling yourself out and going down that sort of route. So, I mean, I would not have believed myself if I was saying that to myself when I graduated, because I think there is a lot of pressure in conservatoire. As you say, you've trained to be a musician, go be a musician. And the thought of, oh, well, you're working at Starbucks or whatever, that would have been horrifying to people. Oh God, I'm still doing the job I'm doing when I was a student or whatever. But if that gives you security to actually advance your career in other ways, then that's totally fine.
Yeah, security and balance and happiness. I'm hearing lots of this, and it's really resonating with me as well. Pete, what do you think?
It's going back a bit to what Rose was just saying about happiness and attitude, and actually being aware of other people's attitudes, how you're affecting them and how they're affecting you. I mean, I can't count the amount of times I've turned up to do a blow band or even a wedding, and I've said to somebody, "Oh, how are you doing today?" "Oh, I'm surviving." "Oh, great. I'm really glad I turned up." to do this wonderful thing called making music, and you've just told me that you're surviving. You know, we're here to help somebody celebrate the happiest day of their life. Can we keep that in mind and take that attitude into what we're performing? And just remember, it's supposed to be joyful, really.
I wonder if some of that comes from like this funny British attitude we have, because I'm sure at least once a day I ask someone how they're doing, and that's the response, and it's like, oh, it's not that bad. It can't be that bad, surely. Anyway, Becca, you had your hand up.
Just looping back to what you were saying about one of your professors at music college giving you that feedback, I think especially when you are in music college or some sort of musical setting like that, that the people that are your professors are like your whole world, and you're in like this whole bubble. And, you know, once you leave, you're suddenly like, oh my God, like what they think doesn't really matter. Like, yeah, of course they know their stuff, like they're amazing players and everything. But if you're shaping your whole life upon one or two things that they've said that have really stuck with you, as soon as you're back in the real world, actually, like everybody else has been saying, it only really matters how you feel, is my opinion.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. We do put these people like on a pedestal because at that time they are like the biggest fountain of knowledge that we have, and so we take everything to heart, and it does take a few years to sort of process that and decide what information is valuable to you or not. Rose, did you have your hand up again? Cool.
Yeah, sorry. I kind of want to double down on that, because I think we've all been in a place where someone has said something to us about our playing, either a teacher or a colleague, that's just like devastating. And it's hard to separate your ego from your playing, because it's, you know, they're really intertwined. It's a good skill to have and one I've like really worked on. But there have been several times in my career, you know, I've never been the most talented player. I've really had to work to get practice because I was really shit until like grad school maybe. And I've had several professional trombone players just tell me, you are not going to be a trombone player. And this was I was 22. You know, it's only like 5 years ago. And now I'm subbing, and, you know, it's not about like proving them wrong, just knowing that they were wrong. They were wrong. And it takes a lot of maturity and looking back, like hindsight is 20/20, but just try not to let those things affect you. Just keep on chugging and it'll make sense later.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. So in everything we've talked about so far, we've been discussing a lot about sort of happiness and balance and finding things that work for you. One of the questions that came in, I'm really curious about, and I know a few of us have had conversations regarding this before. How do you go about balancing all of the aspects of your career with, you know, trying to have a normal person life? Normal person life. Obviously, we are normal people. Anyone got any thoughts on that? Pete, go on, you go first.
I think sort of having with the balance of having a normal people life, I think having a partner or friends or family that get it goes a long way to removing that stress. I also think it can be an absolute nightmare, and no matter how, you know, especially if you've got 5 gigs come in, as I did this summer, mostly people are saying, can you come in depth for me? Somebody's got COVID, 5 gigs come in for one day, and you're thinking, oh, how on earth am I going to do that? And I think balancing it often can come back to stepping back and deciding what's best for yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Anyone else want to jump in on that one? Oh, cool. Rose, you go in first.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I think your calendar is your best friend. Really, just making sure that I actually I have an hour blocked out on Sunday mornings, which are my me time, and I, you know, get coffee and sit in bed, and I look at my calendar and I look at the week ahead and just say, you know, that's going to be a tough drive. I'll make sure I'll get coffee ahead of time, or planning that out. And also thinking, like, making scheduled time to see your loved ones and your friends, and saying, you know, okay, I haven't been home to see my nephew in, you know, 6 weeks. I'm going to schedule that, because if it doesn't go in the schedule, it doesn't happen for me. Things are just too blocked out. And so really being very purposeful with your calendar, I found, is really helpful for that.
Yeah, definitely. Oh my God, so many hands went up at once. I don't know where to go first. Becca T, I'm going to come to you first.
Thank you. I think in the same way that similar to what Rose said, like in the same way that our weeks are going to be different every time for our work, accepting that your like downtime or your you time is going to look different every week, and just keeping in mind that, yeah, some weeks it might not be possible, but then trying to counteract that maybe the next week or whatever. And it can be disappointing, like, I don't know, if you wanted to go to like a regular running club or yoga class or whatever, like it's disappointing that you can't always make that. But we have so much like self-discipline in our musical lives that I think actually having a bit of freedom in your non-musical life is probably a good thing. And yeah, I see a lot of musicians like getting a hobby, but then doing that musician thing of like, I'm going to get so good at this hobby. And then it becomes so intense that then it's not really a hobby anymore. So I think keeping mindful of, you don't have to do a half marathon, everyone, or you don't have to get really into whatever it is. Like it can just be irregular. Like we have enough like music practice, style, discipline in our lives.
Yeah, I think as a breed, we're sort of, there's a type, isn't there? Musicians, we are a special breed. Bless us. Hannah and Becca, you both had a hand up at some point. I'll come to Hannah first.
Yeah, I was going to say I'm still kind of learning to juggle it all. I've always been my happiest when I'm really, really busy, and I used to actually really not make time for my friends or family because I would take other things on, like gigs or whatever, and they would be so supportive, which is great. But in the last year or so, I have really learned to take charge of my own time. And one of the things I really like, Mel, is how you sign up for emails with your work hours are flexible and they change intermittently. And that's something I've actually put on my invoices that I send out to parents, because some of them, they'll be messaging me 3 a.m., 5 a.m., and then wondering why I'm not replying. And it's just like, what? 8 p.m., 9 p.m., there's no boundaries. And it's only something in the last year or so, and I wouldn't say it's the pandemic related, but it's just something that I've been, I suppose, a bit more mindful of, is taking charge of my own time. I'm still really awful at relaxing. Like my mind doesn't stop. I'm pretty bad at like having any downtime, but even on my days off, I like to get up early to like maybe watch some sort of crime documentary. It's kind of like my guilty pleasure, with a coffee, and that's kind of my relaxing, or like go for a walk or coffee with a friend, and I'm trying to do it more like meet up with people more, make more effort, because I do realize for a lot of my years studying especially, I just focused on, I'm here to play the horn, and this is what I'm supposed to do 7 days a week, 12 hours a day, mental. So it is something I'm learning. And actually emailing you back and forth, Mel, I was like, that's amazing. I need to put that on my sign off, because rather than just sort of like best Hannah or whatever, I was like, yes, I need to actually start taking charge of it all. And I have actually been pretty bad with, I have like a physical calendar, and then I use my phone, and I have an actual diary of writing, but I still end up sort of double or triple booking things because I'm still scatterbrained with it all. So I'm super organized, and I managed to, I've never sort of got in trouble with it, but I have had some close calls. It's just like, oh, I mean, there was one recently where I totally thought I had a day off and I didn't, and I ran on stage with soaking wet hair out the shower. That was like in November, and I was chilling. I was super chill, washed my hair. I was like, it's gonna be a great Sunday, and then I got a phone call asking where I was, and I was like, oh my god, I didn't even have any concert blacks because I washed them all, so all I had was jeans. And turned up with like soaking wet hair, and I had a hairdryer in my handbag, and I had 20 minutes backstage. So I made it work, but it wasn't worth the stress, I tell you. It was just a bit like, oh my god. But yeah, I'm trying to learn to be a bit better with my time and like take charge of it, because I feel like, especially with teaching, some of the parents, they have no boundaries. Actually, I find. So yeah, I'm trying to learn. So
yeah, sometimes we all need a day that I wonder if you've all had one. I've had one like that as well, where I've been like, oh no, and you learn from it, and the world keeps on turning, and you're all still fine. But also I would love to take full credit for that email sign off that I have about working flexibly. I actually stole that from Brett Baker, the trombonist. He signed off his emails that way, and I thought, do you know what? That's such a good idea. It's so nice for setting boundaries and leaving yourself a bit of breathing space. And I've put it on all of my email accounts now, and it just makes me feel a little less panicked about the need to reply instantly to everything, because a couple of hours doesn't make that much difference most of the time. Anyway, Becca, did you have your hand up? Becca H.
It's sort of already been covered, really. It's sort of just sort of like planning your time ahead and making sure that you plan that time off. And it could be sort of an hour here or there, but say you're going to have an hour of sort of, I don't know, meeting up with a friend for a coffee or something like that. And I think that's really important, because I'm also the same as Hannah. I find it really hard to switch off from everything. And especially working for different organisations and having different people contact you. I think it's really important to plan time off, even if it's like a Tuesday or something. If you've got a free Tuesday, but you're working all weekend, not feeling guilty for having that Tuesday off.
Yeah, there are a couple of things that I found really helpful. So I'm going to put an input in on my own question, and then I will come to the people that have got their hands up, because that's how it's supposed to work. Two things sort of helped me. My partner does play. He's a tuba player, but he's a chemist for his job, because, he had the choice and he was like, there's money in science. So I say he made the wise choice sometimes. I'm kidding, obviously. I like my job. But because he has this kind of fairly fixed job and he plays for fun, sometimes, we'll do duets just for fun. I'm not holding myself to any, I get to do a bit of extra practice, but I'm not really holding myself to any sort of standard. And because he approaches his playing quite casually, sometimes that's quite a nice way to I feel like I'm doing the thing for work that I need to do, but at home for fun. And there's a nice sort of middle ground there. The other thing that I did when I moved here and I got my new job, and I did that thing of being like, oh, I've moved to a new area, I have no work, I'll take all the work. And after about a year I was like, this is a bit crazy. I never know if I'm coming or going. I don't ever feel like I'm doing anything particularly well. I'm too busy, my brain's too busy. I reduced my teaching to 3 days a week instead of 5, and I teach the same amount of people for the same amount of time in 3 days, and I condensed it, and now I am a bit of a better person for it, because I can actually give them the attention that they need and deserve and pay for, because I'm not running around here, there and everywhere and feeling overwhelmed or frantic. And it made such a difference, because like a few of you have said, I took charge of my own time, but I figured out a way that it could work for them and for me, which ultimately, surely that's the goal. I've got to live my life, so I've got to make it work for me. Good grief. Anyway, sorry, I cut off a couple of people by answering my own question, which is excellent. Pop your hand back up for me if you had your hand up, because I can't remember who it was. Pete.
It's always me.
I forgot you, yeah, sorry.
I think the other thing I'd say about when you're trying to balance things is remembering recovery time. From a point of view of the stress on your chops, and also sleep. I had one really bad 48 hours when I had a gig at a theatre in Colchester. I got home at 5 o'clock in the morning. I got 2 hours sleep, went out, spent 6 hours recording a virtual jazz workshop, and then went and did another gig in the evening. And I was thinking, great, that's loads of work in such a small space of time. It took me a week to get over that. It really, one day follows the next. They're not separate things.
Yeah, I get that one. Rose, did you have your hand up next?
Yeah, I just want to say a lot of my very best friends that are players in LA are actually jazz cats, and they've done straight playing, but these are jazz cats. And I remember getting out of grad school and just being like, they never practice. Like, what on earth? Like, I'm a straight player, I sit down in my box and I play for 4 hours, and they didn't do that. And I feel like it really helped me to see their schedules and how really they're so efficient with their time that they don't have to spend 4 hours a day. It's just not what they do. And they have way more free time than I do. And they're doing things they love and arranging and writing. smoking and just like, and so I think also just like talk to the people around you, because some people have really brilliant ideas about how they make their lives work, especially as freelancers, and they might have the trick that just like fixes your schedule, including just like spend half an hour, smoke in the morning, like that kind of thing. Like my friend does it every single day and his schedule is great. So I don't know.
Excellent. Becky, your hand went off in the middle of that one.
So to kind of echo a few of the points of what people have been saying there, Rose, where you're just talking about kind of, it's really good to get ideas from other people, but to loop it a bit back to the not comparing yourself, only you can answer for your own energy levels. Just because someone else can survive on 4 hours sleep doesn't necessarily mean that you can, or that you'll be able to play well. Like I always say, I mean, there's been a bit of a culture traditionally in the past in the UK of people drinking quite a lot at gigs. And I don't trust myself to drink. I do drink, but I just won't do that at a gig. Not because I don't mind if someone else does, but just because I know that's for me is my level. I don't want to lose that edge. And the same is true for your recovery time and your sleep time and your practice time. Just because someone else can do something doesn't mean that you can. And also, just to kind of add on to what Pete was saying, that was kind of what made me think of the energy was, it gets harder as you get older. So I would definitely say to students, all of us that have pulled those all-nighters at college and turned up to like a rep class or something at 9 o'clock in the morning, like ready to go. Yeah, I'm in my 30s now and I can't do that. I do need my time to wake up in the morning. I like to do my warm-up, So just being aware of what your own needs are and your own energy levels are, really, and setting your own boundaries for that, really. And also to loop back to kind of the organising, it really does help. Again, I think it was Pete that said this before, is when you've got someone who understands or gets it, because my parents are great, but they did not understand the world of music at all. And I felt like I was always fighting them, not literally, but, on like how we live our lives and everything. But my husband is as a professional trumpet player. In fact, he's teaching in the other room, so there might be a little waft of trumpet coming through. But because he gets it, our schedules are different and we do slightly different things, but because he gets it, he understands, what we have to do to prep. When you come home from a day of teaching and it's like, well, I've got that gig at the weekend, so I need to do my hours practice now. Whereas someone else might be like, well, why aren't we having dinner? Why aren't we sitting down watching TV? And just knowing that there is that give and take as well is really helpful. But on the flip side, it does mean we've got two schedules to organise at the same time. So being super organised really helps.
Yeah, I know the thing I shouldn't have taken away from that was the idea of a waft of trumpet, but I particularly enjoyed that turn of phrase. So I'm going to sort of bank that one. I quite enjoyed that. So I have a great question that I would love to hear from you all about before we finish, probably, because we're sort of running out of time, which is shocking. I keep looking at the clock and being like, oh, crumbs, okay, I need to stop telling so many stories and stop talking like now and get myself back on track. But this question, I thought there's probably going to be some either infuriating or hilarious submissions for. And this one was, what's the weirdest gig or event you've ever worked on? So I'm happy to start this one off because mine is both infuriating and bizarre. I was once booked for an Umpar gig at Heathrow Airport for Lufthansa Airlines, and it was not a very well paid gig, but it was for a friend from college. So I was like, fine, I'll go cover for him. And it was a costumed gig. Now, lots of you haven't met me in person. I'm not the skinniest girl in the world. They didn't ask for my measurements for my costume, and they told me women are to wear heels for this standing gig. And so already I thought, you're not going to be my favourite people in the world, but I need the money and it's for a pal. How awfully can it go? Listeners, if I had followed all of their advice, my full bum would have been on show for this entire gig. So I took a pair of leggings and I put it on underneath my costume and they were like, no, you've got to take those off. And I was like, I'm absolutely not playing a gig with my bum out for £70. You're not paying me enough at all. And these photos will be around forever. And you know what? I saw one of them on Facebook recently and I thought, thank God I covered my bum. So there you go. Like metaphorically and literally. I've never needed to specify that was a metaphorical and literal sentence before. So there you go. That is probably my weirdest one. So anyway, Pete, your hand went up next, and I'm not forgetting you. Look, I was paying attention and everything.
I appreciate that. Thank you. I have to confess, I've had my fair share of lederhosen gigs, including one when the button popped off, and I sort of ended up with one leg raised for most of the gig just to make sure that things weren't sliding down. But I think my weirdest gigs sort of consistently were working on cruise ships, because you just get the most random things come up. And I mean, I can remember some of the charts coming up, and it was Dancing Queen by ABBA. And that was in the trombone. It was in nobody else. It was in the trombone. That didn't get played. I won't lie. That was too high and big. That was getting missed out. But just when you're trying to keep your composure on stage when things are going wrong, we had this really, really talented singer on who could roller skate and sing. But I hasten to add, we're on a cruise ship. We're in the North Atlantic, and we're listing 4 degrees in every direction. So she does a roller skate and singing thing, and she gets somebody up at the audience basically to give her a massage, take the roller skates off, and just sort of pamper her a little bit while she's singing a certain Al Green song, which I guess we can all guess which one that one is. First show, absolutely fine. Second show, the gentleman that came up at the audience put the roller skates skate side down. So then proceeded to chase the skates across the stage for 2 minutes. Oh, well, we sat there playing Let's Get It On.
Oh my God. Excellent. I'm looking for the next person, because I suspect we're both now far too in hysterics to finish this story. Becca, what's yours?
It's nowhere near as hilarious as that. But I used to do a lot of harp, specifically at weddings. And I remember I turned up for this one. I think it may have been an encore gig. Not to name names. I mean, it wasn't their fault. But we turned up, and it was a flute and harp gig. I'd never met the flautist, so we were like kind of doing a sight reading on the day sort of gig. And turned up, and the whole wedding congregation could only speak Chinese. And neither me nor the flautist could speak Chinese. And so we were sitting there, and they were also doing a lot of like rehearsal for the wedding, but we couldn't tell if the ceremony had like started or whether they were still rehearsing, because it was all in Chinese, and they all looked like she came out like in her dress, then like went back in, and we'd been told to play for like the walking down the aisle, so we'd just start like playing. They'd be like, no, just like rehearsal. We'd be like, okay. And then they told us to play for the wedding vows, I think, but we didn't know when they were, because we couldn't understand Chinese, and they'd given us a order of service in Chinese. So we were just sitting there for this entire gig, like looking at each other like, is it now? Like, also going to be sight reading, so we were also stressed. And so then we like occasionally would just like start and be like, plonk. And then we're like, no, I don't think it's now. And then finally we realised like the vows would be when they were repeating back what the other person was saying. So we're like, okay, no, it's now. And then, yeah, that was just one of those days where you're just like, that was not good.
You know, the only advantage to gigs like that is you get a good story to go home and tell to somebody else, which is, yeah, they're the things that I like about a gig that goes slightly wrong. Because, you know, we've got to find the funny side. Anyway, I'm looking for the next one. Who's got a good one? Go on, Becca.
So it's actually when I was still studying at Birmingham. So we had, in my going to my 3rd and 4th year, we had a new building. So they knocked down the old building, and I hope the composer's not listening to this, but there was a student composition, where he decided that he wanted to try and knock down the concert hall before they actually demolished it. So his composition was very, very obscure. We all had to wear yellow hard hats and ear defenders, and apparently the clashing of all the tonalities and the quarter tones and everything would knock the building down. And I remember we just got to the end and the audience were just like, yep. So strange. I just had to bring that one up today.
Wow.
Yeah. I don't
I'm
quite
so
know how
curious.
scientifically he thought that would happen, but yeah.
Yeah, that was going to be my next sort of point. Was I'm so curious with the logic behind
Yeah.
that, and oh wow.
Yeah. But the yellow
Did you
hard hats
rehearse?
looked great, so.
Well,
Did
there's
you
a
rehearse
reason
the
why.
piece?
Pardon?
Did
There's
you
a reason
rehearse
why
the piece?
Go ahead.
Yes, we did rehearse it, but not the whole thing because he didn't want to spoil it. So it was like rehearsed in segments. Oh yeah.
Wow.
Strange.
People are astounding and terrifying in equal measure, is what I'm learning in life. Anyone got another for us? Hannah, go on then.
I've done quite a few weird ones actually. I was literally just listening, thinking of like what's the weirdest one. This one's from years ago. It's like 2010, maybe 11. But I did a Halloween concert for a university, and they rented out like a club basically in London. I think it was like either King's or something. Could have even been just like London University something. But it was all themed, and because it's Halloween party, they wanted an orchestra. You would have thought we'd be playing like Monster Mash and all that, but we weren't. We were doing like general pop tunes, which was a bit weird because they were arranged really weirdly. But I mean, they had full on like burlesque dancers. There were naked people in like cages. It was like a lot. Like everywhere you turned was something, and I was just kind of like, I didn't know where to look, if you know what I mean. Every room was just weird. And everyone was very, very drunk. And it was kind of really weird. I mean, it was a lot going on. So it was hard to try and do my offbeats, because that's probably all I had. But at the end, the best thing was being told that I play the saxophone really good. That was probably the best part of it. I was like, it was weird. It was really weird. I didn't feel like it was Halloween-y. I mean, they had like, they did have like fright rooms and stuff, but the best thing about it, I suppose, was we did get to go around each room and like after the gig and like kind of have a mooch. But yeah, that was probably the weirdest. I mean, there was like, I don't know if I'm allowed to say it. I don't know. There were like dildos on the ceiling, like hundreds of dildos stuck to the ceiling. It was like really weird. It was just so weird. But I swear when we all got booked, because it was again like a freelance thing, we all got booked like individually. It was not advertised like anything. It was just can you just help us for our sort of like uni party or whatever. So yeah, that's probably the weirdest one. I can literally like picture loads of it. I still remember it's like engraved in my brain.
Yeah, I'm not surprised by that at all. Obviously, I'm surprised by the gig. I'm not surprised that it's stayed in your brain. That's not me admitting, oh, those the gigs with the dildos on the ceiling. We've all done those, right? No, that sounds bizarre. Once again, I'm going with the what were people thinking. I'm curious. I will never know. Becky, you had your hand up before that one.
God, mine's going to sound so tame after that. I think the comedy comes from the fact that it was a proper, fancy, traditionally staged gig, a brass octet with a full chorus and choral soloists, and we're all, like proper tux and concert blacks and everything. And it was in Town Hall in Birmingham. But it was one of those gigs where we were accompanying the choir, but then they had their own moments, and then soloists did their own thing as well. But the brass were on stage, on the front of the stage, for the entire concert, which is the important detail. Because this this young lad came on and did his little tenor solo, and bless him, he had a little bit of a voice crack moment. But I don't know if he was like a bit inexperienced with it or what, but he tried to style it out, and he held this like, like a good 6 beats of this like warbling sound across the whole hall. And you could tell, when the audience just kind of just turns. But I made the mistake of looking at one of my colleagues, and we were all laughing, and you could just see like their shoulders going like, and we're on stage, this is really serious, it's it can happen, and just the cringiness of trying to hold in the laughter when you're being watched. And the thing is I think the audience knew as well, which was even worse, and we were like, oh my god. So it wasn't weird at all really, but it was definitely memorable. And yeah, and even the singers afterwards were saying he should have just stopped, he should have just cut off and started again, it would have been fine. But no, he held it, and it echoed around the hall. Yeah, and it took us a good few minutes to get over that.
There is nothing worse than getting the giggles when you're not supposed to. I think we've all been there. Go on, Rose, have you got one for us?
Mine's not really funny. It's just like a very weird gig. I got a call when I was in grad school here in LA, and someone, said, "Hey, I asked a contractor for a trombonist information. Can you play sad trombone?" I was like, "Trombone sadly, or do you mean wah wah?" And they're like, "Yeah, no, wah wah." I'm like, "Okay, I can do that. Yes, I can do that." Do you need anything else? Do you want me to play sad songs? He's like, "No, we just want wah wah. Can you come? Here we're filming. We need someone to play wah wah. Can you come?" I was like, "Okay." So this was also the most I've ever been paid for a gig, and I did. It was for ESPN. So before the football broadcast on Sunday morning, and it broadcast nationally. And it was for Rob Riggle's show. He does this 30-minute comedy show. And, in the middle, there's a trombonist that walks out in a tuxedo playing womp womp. And it's 2 seconds. And it was a day of filming. And I remember very distinctly, the guy who hired me assured me, she's like, "No, they just want womp womp. That's fine." He also didn't tell them that I was a woman. And so when I arrived for costuming, they're like, "We need to find a female tuxedo." And so the tuxedo was weird. When it arrived, I had a top hat. It was the weirdest costume I've ever worn. And I remember very distinctly, after I'd done the take a couple times, the director just saying, "Can you play anything else?" It's like, "Yes. Is there something specific you'd like me to play?" And he's like, "Maybe not." I was like, "Okay, I can play something if you'd like." He's like, "Do you play something sad?" I'm like, "Okay." And so just it was the most awkward, 80 people staring at me. "What can you do?" I'm like, "I don't know. I don't even know what this is in my hands anymore." I just it's such a stark difference from what I usually play. It was very fun day.
I love the idea of someone picking up the phone and calling a professional and being like, "What can you do? And can you do anything more than this weird bare minimum we've asked for?" It's so funny to me that there's, I don't know. Anyway, I will not go off on a tangent about this. It's just so funny to me that someone's like, "Oh, womp womp, is that all you can do? Your years of training, that's all it's amounted to."
Yeah, I have a master's degree, but all I can do is just those 2 notes.
Years and years of training for sad trombone. I can't. People are wonderful and weird. Folks, I've just seen what the time is. We are going to have to wrap up. And I will make sure that we tag you everywhere and that people know where to find you. And do let me know if you don't want people to know where to find you, because I get it. We've established people are real weird. But thank you all so much. I've taken a lot from this, so I'm hoping that when we put this forth into the universe in a week's time, that they all enjoy it too. So thank you so much. I'm going to switch the recording off, but thank you.